It may be that we will never be able to reach them and to touch them and to hold them and to grasp them in our hands. But even though that be true, like the mariners on the sea of waters, we can set our course by those ideals. And when one thinks of the great ideals by which this institution has set its course, have all the achievements been made? Of course not. Of course not. Have all the dreams been fulfilled? Of course not. Have all the successes that one could imagine been reality? Of course not. But if I could repeat what was said this morning in that ungrammatical response to the taxi driver, I meant it seriously and sacredly when I said, ungrammatically, you ain't seen nothing yet. And I believe that because when I look at the list of the trustees of this institution at the present time, when I look at the leadership and the enormous good fortune that the trustees had in securing a man of the caliber of Thomas Trotter, who is famous and known throughout all of Methodism for his devotion, his abilities, his skills, his honor. I can't imagine anyone that could have led them in a wiser course than the selection of this leader for this institution. And I salute them, and I salute the president, because I think together, with a strong board of trustees, with strong community support, that this school can begin then to fulfill its real mission. I want to, I've not spoken of this, President Trotter, but I do want to give you a challenge this afternoon. Every one of you have arms around a lot of projects. You have a lot of irons in the fire. You have a lot of claims on time and resources and energy. But I would like you to join me on this occasion to say to one another and to these trustees and to this president, no matter how vast our commitments, no matter how much we try to get our arms around to manage and to influence and to impact, let's commit ourselves to do new thinking with regard to stretching those arms as wide as they need to embrace the concerns and the interests of this institution, both in our time, our energies, our talents, and our financial resources, to let the dream that has been dreamed come true. Now I want to pay tribute to just one professor who was here. Some of you remember, and I'm closing now, believe me. I didn't know how stupid and limited a young college president could be until we appointed to the faculty the dean of the School of Graduate Studies of Syracuse University. His name was Harry Ganders. And those of you who remember Harry will remember that he was not just another dean. He was something indeed. I'll give you one little example before I tell you what I want to tell you about Harry Ganders. He rushed into my office one day and he said, Mr. President, have you seen this catalog? I said, of course I've seen the catalog. He said, did you read it? Well, I said, I read a part of it. Why? He said, I can't believe that you read it. What did you think when you read it? Well, I said, I don't know what you're supposed to think when you read a college catalog. Well, you look here on the opening page. It says officers of the university. What do you see there? It says President Fred McGinnis. The very idea. He said, your name, sir, is not Fred, it is Frederick. I am going to the public relations office and say they must never make a mistake like that again. He said, imagine someone named Thomas being put Tom, or someone named William being put William. He said, I shall straighten them out, and out he went in a flash. One day, Harry rushed into the office, went right past the secretaries. He did not suffer the secretaries gladly. Rushed right past them, opened the door, and came in and said, drop what you're doing, no matter what you're doing, come with me. I said, what's going on? You don't have time to ask a question? Don't ask it. Come with me. Well, I jumped up, and I ran. And I ran out of the office, down by the conference hall. He said, I want to show you something. And he said, look out the window. And I said, I'm looking out. He said, what do you see? Well, I said, I see a parking lot. I see trees. I see sidewalks. I see a lot. Oh, no, not yet. Go ahead. What else? Well, I said, students, a lot of students are coming in. He said, you're getting close. Say some more. Look at those students. Oh, there are 100. It was registration day, first day of registration. Oh, my God, Mr. President, he said, I'm afraid you're going to miss it. I said, well, what is it? He said, you haven't found it yet. Look at all the students. He said, what you see, sir, he said, look at me. What you see is waves of ignorance rolling in upon us. Waves of ignorance. And they expect us to do something about that ignorance that's coming. So indeed, I got my lessons from Paragenders. Let me then close to say how pleased and delighted Harold and I are to be here, and our daughter Mary, who lives here in Anchorage, to join us today, to be a part of this fellowship, and to have a chance to visit with you and to renew some acquaintances and make some other ones. Let me just close reminding you again of that little outline of A. Raymond Grant. I mentioned it briefly, and I'll mention it and sit down. Let's apply it to ourselves in relation to the goals and the future of this university. There is no living without belonging. There is no belonging without involvement. And there is no involvement without commitment. Thank you. God bless Alaska. God bless Alaska Pacific University. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dave Petewall, and I'm your current chairman of the Alaska State Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Alaska State Chamber and Alaska Pacific University, I want to welcome you to this celebration of the 30th anniversary of statehood for the state of Alaska and the founding of Alaska Pacific University. We're also tonight celebrating summer solstice, and I want to thank you all for giving up your evening to be here with us. This is a celebration of things past, and it's also going to be a look forward to what might be in store for Alaska. And the combination of the State Chamber of Commerce and Alaska Pacific University represents that we think business and education joining together have an important part for Alaska's future. I would like to start this evening's celebration with an invocation from Bishop Francis Hurley. Bishop Hurley, would you come forth, please?
God Almighty, you are the source of the wisdom of the ages. We come tonight to celebrate the search for truth through a university, and it is in seeking and finding the truth that we learn to know one another. We come together to celebrate statehood for Alaska. And it's through our living together in the political world that we learn to love one another. We thank you for the blessing that you have given to all of us through Alaska Methodist, Alaska Pacific University, and through the state of Alaska. Make us always aware of your blessings, and as we enjoy the blessings of the fruits of the earth here tonight, make us mindful of those who do not have those fruits. And make us always mindful that as we seek you in the wisdom of the ages, we really find one another. Amen.
To start off this evening, I would like to ask Rick Mystrom, who is the chairman of the Anchorage Organizing Committee, to come forth and give us a few words about his vision as to what might happen tonight and what is in the future. As you all know, Rick has been the guiding light for the Anchorage Olympic effort. Rick, could you please come forth?
When George Cruz and Teresa Weitzel and Linda Chase came to me about a week ago and asked if I would share some opening comments brief opening comments at this important moment in our state's history, I first thought that perhaps I wasn't the right person to do that, because the Olympic dream that I was so intimately involved with over the past 4 years had ended unsuccessfully just 3 weeks ago. But as they described to me their personal views of our 30 years of statehood, I realized that they were talking about an experience, not about a result, and that they were talking about a journey, not about a destination. And they were talking about a people who believed in themselves and who dared to follow a dream with no illusions of success, yet also with no fear of failure. And so I agreed. And as I prepared my thoughts, as I prepared to think of what I would share with you today, I reread a column written by a man named Bud Greenspan. And Bud is an Olympic follower, an Olympic filmmaker, and has probably seen more Olympic bids than I think any person who's not a member of the IOC yet alive today. And as I reread those comments by him, I realized that he could very well be describing those Alaskans of another generation who fought so well for statehood, even though what he described in here was the bid that Alaska and that Anchorage put together for Lausanne. So I'd like to share with you some comments from that, some paragraphs from his column that was published in the LA Times Syndicate and the Olympian Magazine and in hundreds of papers around the United States. So here are some comments from his column that I'd like to share with you to sort of open the thoughts this evening. One evening before you sit down to watch television, pour yourself a stein of beer and raise a glass in a toast to a marvelous group of Alaskans who did America proud in Lausanne, Switzerland. There, this joyful contingent of more than 100 men and women from Alaska, most of whom paid their own way to Lausanne, showed the high rollers and deal makers from 6 other cities what talent, pride, and courage is all about. They brought tears to the eyes of those of us who on rare occasions think back to the noble pioneers who prevailed at Valley Forge and survived that awful trek over the desolate plains to California when America was young. For the Alaskan people are America's present-day pioneers. Brilliantly clothed in their white and blue parkas and seemingly everywhere, the Alaskans were the most visible and enthusiastic group in Lausanne. There were no front-page superstars from Alaska, but their joy and vision brought more attention to their presentation than any other city's bid. After the voting was over, one reporter came over to a leader and asked what this group of Alaskans would do now. Speaking for all of them, he replied, "We'll get back home on Sunday, take Monday off, and on Tuesday we'll start working for 1994. So one night when you've got nothing better to do, raise your glass in a toast to that happy band of Americans from Alaska. Those pioneers who entered the arena, dreamed a good dream, and fought the good fight. For 1 week in Lausanne, they showed the world what American pioneers were like those many years ago, and because of it, they brought honor to us all." As I read that article, I could visualize those very same words being written about those Alaskans who 30 years ago pursued their dream to the successful conclusion of statehood. Well, the battle for statehood was successful, for the betterment of us all, and the battle for the Olympics was not. But both groups of Alaskans, a full generation apart, showed that they had the courage to pursue their dreams, the willingness to endure long battles, and the wisdom to accept the fact that along with the opportunity to succeed comes also the freedom to fail. And I believe that 30 years from now, our children and our grandchildren will be more willing to dream, more able to fight, and more likely to win because of the legacy left to them by these 2 generations of Alaskans. And as we begin to reflect tonight on the past 30 years of our statehood, and as we start to prepare visions for the next 30 years, I'd like to share with you folks here tonight, the closing comments of my presentation to the United States Olympic Committee, because I think it so accurately describes not only those Alaskans, many of whom are in this room, who fought so hard for the Olympics, but also those Alaskans who fought so well for statehood over 30 years ago. Here is that conclusion to the United States Olympic Committee in Des Moines just 3 weeks ago. In Lausanne, Anchorage stepped up to the Olympic threshold. In Seoul, we opened the door for the Winter Games to return to America. And now, after 4 years of sweat, tears, joy, and dreams, the people of Alaska will not falter. We will push ourselves 1 notch higher, 1 inch further, 1 second faster. We will not quit. We will endure. And we will live by those words that brought us to you tonight. Ask not alone for victory, but ask for courage. For if you endure, you bring honor to yourself. Even more, you bring honor to us all. Thank you very much for letting me share this moment with you.
Podium back up there.
How does that sound to you?
Start 7:50 registration, and then Hobo Jim comes down all on his money. So set up Hobo Jim. The microphone's there.
With 55 Alaskans who were involved in drafting the Alaska Constitution in 1955, hence their membership in the Alaska 55 Club. Those people that are here today are Steve McCutcheon, Vic Fisher, Maynard Lundberg, and Barry White Jr. Would you please stand up and be recognized for your contribution? This is also the 30th anniversary of the Alaska State Chamber. We also came into being right at the same time as statehood, and ever since then we've had the president or chairman, and we have a number of the people who have been chairman or president of the Alaska State Chamber present. I'd like to ask them to stand as I read their names. Jack Anderson, 1952, George Chirac, 1958, Bob Anderson, 1971, Phil Holsworth, 1972. Phil was the one who told me he was president and not chairman. Jim Campbell, 1974. Don Finney, 1981, George Easley, 1983, Al Fleetwood, 1986, Harold Mold, 1987, Don Dickey, who was president of the Chamber for 21 years, cannot be here, but we do have our current president, George Cruz, who's been here since 1982. These people have all been involved in Alaska. Can we give them a big hand, please? I also have a letter here from a former state chamber chairman, which I'll have to put my glasses on to read. This comes from Washington, D.C., and it's addressed to myself, Dr. Thomas Trotter, and honored guests. It says, unfortunately, Senate business prevents my being with you tonight as you reflect on Alaska's progress over the past 30 years. It seems like only yesterday when we witnessed the groundbreaking for a new university on a remote hill in the outskirts of Anchorage and celebrated our official recognition of the 49th state. As Alaska has grown, our state's only private four-year university has grown along with it, mirroring the trials and tribulations connected with the good and bad economic times and changing social priorities. APU has certainly turned the corner towards success thanks to wise leadership, dedication, hard work from staff and faculty, and most importantly, support from the community, not only for the university, but also for the need for quality private education in Alaska. Already, many of the recipients of this fine local education are political and business leaders in Alaska. Others are molding the lives of our future movers and shakers as educators in our public and private schools. Special thanks should be given to the State Chamber for their role in today's activities. At this critical junction in Alaska's short life, a pause to reflect on 30 years of our rapid progress and often rampant change will hopefully assist our leaders in dedicating their time and planning skills to a steady course of positive action for the future. Nancy joins me in sending our best wishes for a most enjoyable evening. Sincerely, Frank Murkowski, United States Senator and former Alaska State Chamber of Commerce Chairman. We now have some very special entertainment for you this evening, which I hope will help lift your spirits for Alaska. I know this entertainer quite well. When I went to my first State Chamber convention in Valdez, we happened to run into him in the airport, and he was coming down to entertain, and the bus had just ran over his guitar. So I know that he can perform under adverse circumstances. I take great pleasure in introducing Alaska's own Hobo Jim. Hobo.
Thank you.
In the caribou tundra, in the wild barren land, on the fierce Arctic ice where the polar bears stand, where the trail of the Eskimo hunter is worn, all this is the country where legends are born, where the northern lights blaze above a cold Arctic haze, and caribou come to an old shaman's drum. In saloons and in dance halls they talked of the gold. There were stories of fortune, stories of cold, and the trail of the weary gold miner is worn. Ah, this is the country where legends are born, where they measured a man by the gold in his hand, the speed of his gun, or the dogs he would run. Well, they came here to settle, to build a new land. In her mountains and valleys, in their cabins they stand, and the trail of the hardy homesteader is one. Ah, this is the country where legends are born. And all these fields you see now were broke by their plow, and their children have grown to build homes of their own. And in the caribou tundra, in the wild barren land, on the fierce Arctic ice where the polar bears stand, where the trail of the Eskimo hunter is worn. Ah, this is the country where legends are born.
Thank you. Doing you on my own, get a little train music going.
She's fast and she's sleek, she's a northbound, she's the engineer's love and his pride. Through canyons and mountains of snowbound, ah, it's the great Alaska Railroad I ride. She'll be pulling out of Anchorage when the morning comes around, with her mighty engine shining blue and gold.
You can, you don't. And your state chamber and Alaska Pacific University had these things made in Alaska, and the mold broke. So those of you who did not receive your commemorative paperweight, we are refabricating the mold. We know those of you who did not get one, we have your names, and you will receive one. I don't know if it'll be mailed or you'll have to come down and pick it up. So don't worry if you didn't get one, it's forthcoming. Being from the Chamber of Commerce, of course, there must be at least one commercial tonight. And I would like to plug the Alaska State Chamber of Commerce's annual convention, which will be held here in Anchorage on October 2 through 4. The theme of the convention is going to be Alaska business alive and well, hoping to convey to people who come up from outside, which is about half of our convention, that things aren't so bad in Alaska. Now tonight, and tonight only, if you will register from the form that's on your tables, You will save $50 on registration, and I'm sure George Cruz would be happy to pick up any registrations that are available. We have a drawing for some door prizes tonight, so if I could have Kathy Tarr come up and assist me with the drawing. Kathy, as many of you may not know, is the manager of our Anchorage office for the State Chamber and is responsible in a large part for putting this function on tonight. She has worked up a lot of the details. We need to give her a hand as she comes up. Our first prize will be a drawing for an autographed copy of a new book called Reaching for a Star, which was authored by Jerry Boquette, and it's a book on Alaska's quest for statehood. Now, I believe they're down here, aren't they? Jerry, would you stand up so we could see you, and out in the back. It's an impartial drawing. The winning number is 163. This is an autographed copy. Who has 163? Must be present to win. $163 going once. Last year hasn't quite been a year. You remember the Alaska State Chamber of Commerce sponsored the Alaska Governor Summit, at which time we had all of the living governors in Alaska present. Our next door prize will be a signed print from the Governor Summit. Let me find it here. There's only 50 of these made that's signed by all of Alaska's former governors who were present. Kathy will get the lucky person. The lucky person for the signed Alaska Governor's print is number 112. I see a lot of people fidgeting in the back. All right. Our third prize is a book interpreting Alaska's history by Stephen Haycock. Stephen writes a column, of course, for our local papers. Stephen, are you here tonight to stand up and be recognized? If you're there and stood up, I can't see because of the bright light. It's published by Alaska Pacific University. Kathy, you can draw. This one has a name on the back, but the winner here is number 554. Yeah. This is the publisher of the book. She says she will redonate it. We'll try again. You're supposed to draw. 455. There you got it. Our last prize is a very special one. It's by Fairbanks artist Claire Faye. Faye, I'm told. I'm glad I got my assistant here to keep me honest. She recently produced a special series of stamps which were issued by the Marshall Islands to commemorate the 30 years of Alaska statehood. You may wonder why the Marshall Islands, and that's because Baron von Kotzebue traveled to Kotzebue Sound from the Marshall Islands in 1850, and she's done this special series of stamps. You can buy these on stamps, but the drawing tonight will be for this print. After we've got one more to go. Hope the artist is not here. We'll pick the number is 136. Number 136, are you here? Who has been in Alaska since 1972 and been very active in promoting foster care. Alaska Pacific University chose Ann to introduce their president because she is an Alaska Pacific University student, and they're very proud that she is the first student of theirs to have service in the legislature. Ann, could you come forth to introduce Dr. Trotter?
I actually believe there are 3 APU alumni or AMU alumni who have served in the legislature. Okay. Now can you hear me? Okay. I think there are 3 APU alumni who have served in the legislature. I don't stand alone. I had the honor of introducing Dr. Trotter about 3 weeks ago in a less formal situation, and I didn't have a biological background on him. And so I said, he has an outstanding list of accomplishments. And when I got this list, it really is an outstanding list of accomplishments, so I'm going to share some of it with you tonight. Dr. Trotter is the 7th president of Alaska Pacific University. He's a native of Los Angeles, served in the U.S. Army Air Corps in World War II in the China, Burma, India theater. He graduated from Occidental College and received his Ph.D. from Boston University. He served as a college minister and a church extension pastor before joining the faculty of the School of Theology at Claremont in California in 1959. He was elected the dean of that school in 1962 and led it to prominence as a graduate theological seminary. In 1973, he became the general secretary of the Board of Higher Education and Ministry of the United Methodist Church. In that post, he gave oversight to 128 Methodist colleges and universities. He was instrumental in developing innovative programs in ethnic minority empowerment, risk management, investments, and scholarships. During his administration, significant international programs were established, including a U.S.-Japan consortium and a new university in Zimbabwe. Dr. Trotter has been a director of many businesses, including the Third National Bank of Nashville, Tennessee, and is a recipient of 10 honorary degrees. My experience with Dr. Trotter, in that experience, I know him as a genuinely broad and open-minded individual and a very gentle spirit. Dr. Trotter.
Thank you, Ann. I appreciate that introduction. Will Senator McCutcheon, Mr. Atwood, Governor Hickel, and Mayor Fuhs come forward and take their places here while I make some additional remarks. I would like to recognize 3 persons who were important in higher education in Alaska. We are honored to share this significant event tonight with the State Chamber of Commerce. Alaska Pacific University and the state of Alaska came into existence on one wild 24-hour period in 1959. Ground was broken for our university, and statehood was celebrated on the same 24-hour period 30 years ago. When we were contemplating how we would celebrate this, we thought we should celebrate together. And I'm deeply grateful to David Petewall and to other officers of the State Chamber for sharing this celebration with us. I would like to acknowledge the presence this evening of the Chairman of the Board of the Alaska Pacific University, a great Alaskan, a strong leader in higher education, and my very dear friend, Mr. Larry Carr. this afternoon at the university we had a special celebration for the Committee of 100, the persons in Anchorage who more than any others invested energy and enthusiasm and personal resources in founding Alaska Methodist University. And their colleague and the second president of the university, Dr. Fred McGinnis, is here tonight. And many of you know him and would like now to welcome him at this time. Where are you, Fred? Finally, I would like to acknowledge my close friend and partner in higher education, Chancellor Don Barron, Chancellor of the University of Alaska Anchorage. I have said that we have here in this city the possibility of being the great center for higher education in the North Pacific Rim. And I know that Chancellor Barron and other officers of the University of Alaska Anchorage share this vision, and I would like to salute him tonight. I believe he's over here. Don Barron. On behalf of the State Chamber and the University, I want to thank the major sponsors of this event. They're listed on page 2 of your folder tonight. Alaska Pipeline Service Company, British Petroleum Exploration, Chevron USA, and Exxon USA. These are the major sponsors for this event. I think we owe them a round of applause. And the supporting sponsors are listed there as well. Alaska Airlines, Alaska Rail, photographer and writer whose life as a leader in Alaska spans a half century or more of public service. Steve was a member of the Constitutional Convention, and he will speak in his remarks from that vantage point. Steve will be followed by Robert Atwood, who for more than 50 years has been publisher of the Anchorage Times, was widely recognized to be one of the great leaders in the drive to statehood, and continues to serve in many institutional ways for the benefit of this state, including his longtime friendship to the university. Robert Atwood will be followed by Governor Walter J. Hickel, known to all of you, former governor of this state, former secretary of the U.S. Department of Interior, owner and chairman of the board of Hickel Investments, and no shrinking violet. Wally Hickel has every right to speak about the next 30 years of Alaska. And Governor Hickel will be followed by Paul Fuhs, who is mayor of the city of Unalaska and founding president of a number of civic and public organizations. He is a graduate of West High School in Anchorage, studied economics at several universities, including the Alaska Pacific University, the University of Alaska at St. Olaf, and he has a strong interest in the future of mariculture, in the quality of life for Alaskans, and he will help our deliberations tonight by looking toward the future. I'm greatly honored to present to you for our first speaker, who will be followed by those that I've introduced in order. Our first speaker, Senator Stephen McCutcheon. Let's give him a warm welcome.
There shan't be much of a formal presentation. I'd like to comment that so far in our history, these last 30 years, our Constitution has served us quite well. If it can serve us as well for another 30 years without any major amendments, I think that our posterity will be very happy. in these last 30 years, there have been 19 amendments made to the Constitution, 18 of them very inconsequential. The one that was a consequential amendment was that created permanent funds. In the legislature or in the Constitutional Convention, we did not strive for any dedication of monies because we did not believe that a dedication of monies was a practical monetary and fiscal practice. However, I think we were in error. The Constitutional Convention was in error in several other areas, and as far as the legislature is concerned, I must admit, as an ex-politician, that we made some mistakes. But to give you a brief history of who and whom were involved in it, let me say that some have wondered why there were 55 members to the Constitution. And I suggest that there would be very few in here could say why there were 55 members to the Constitution. But the United States Constitution was drafted by 55 persons. Our legislature, the territorial legislature, felt at that time that it might be practical to divide up one person for each state, take 48 members, and cast them about over the whole of Alaska, blanketed with various districts so that no portion of the state would be unrepresented. And then to help balance against the potential of sectionalism, they added 7 more to make the 55, and those were to be elected at large from the whole of the state. Of the 21 candidates who ran for that office, for those offices, I should say, 7 were actually elected. 4 from Juneau, surprisingly, 2 from Fairbanks, and myself from Anchorage, at large. And I might add, as a matter of amusement, I spent $60 on my election. In contrast to elected office today, I'll say. The Legislative Committee, which I chaired, was one of the smallest committees of the whole convention. We had 7 members. 4 had previous legislative experience, and 3 had considerable experience in public affairs, such as city councils and various committees in the communities. Of that group, we had 1 professional, 3 business persons, 1 fisherman, and 2 women who had been very active in public affairs and civic affairs. And of this 7, we were scattered out in such a fashion as 2 from Anchorage and 1 each from Fairbanks, Kodiak, Petersburg, Nome, and Juneau, which gave our group a fair representation of the major population centers of the territory in those days. After organization, the first big question that was posed was how would our legislature be constituted? In our committee, the Legislative Branch Committee, we had 2 very staunch supporters of unicameralism. John McGinnis from Nome and Jack Hinkle from Kodiak. So consequently, in order to determine how we were going to proceed, we asked the President, Egan, to call a special session of the, a special evening session of the Constitutional Convention and invite the public to hear the debates on unicameralism and bicameralism. Well, Messrs. Hinkle and McGinnis presented their arguments for unicameralism in very forceful terms. It was very convincing. I thought to myself, my goodness, we're not going to have a bicameral legislature after all. But after the rest of the delegates spoke, the decision was weighted heavily in favor of bicameralism, and consequently, our committee could then go to work. In designing the legislature, we followed pretty much the format of the old territorial legislature with which you're all familiar. Of course, our community of Alaska was then much smaller than it is now, and more people were really quite well acquainted with it. We made some changes. First, I think the first change that we made was the increasing the legislature to 60 from 40. I remember in 1933, when I was a page in the House of Representatives in Juneau, that we had 8 senators and 16 representatives. And then in 1935, the Federal Congress increased our representation to 40, and we increased it in the Constitutional Convention to 60. Another place where we made a change was in the impeachment proceedings. We decided that it would be practical if the Senate brought the charges against the person to be impeached, and that the House should do the trying of the case, feeling that the House, being last elected by the public, would reflect the most recent opinions of malfeasance, misfeasance, or whatever the charges might have been. In consideration of the vetoes, we adopted a unicameral platform here, let's call it a platform at least, in that we required both houses of the legislature to meet in one session together, a joint session, in order to consider vetoes that the governor may have imposed on the legislation. In normal legislation, we use the standard 2/3 to override the governor's veto. But when it came to fiscal matters, the budget and revenue matters, we decided that it took 3/4 of the legislature to override the governor. Because in the executive branch, Senator Victor Rivers and his group had given the governor line veto on any matters in the budget. So we felt that the governor might hold back some of the wild expenditures that the legislature might undertake. Unfortunately, that clause doesn't seem to have worked very well in these last few years. Were our committee working today, and had I a word in it, I think I might suggest, if there were another constitutional convention, that we make some changes. The first change I would like to make is to limit the terms of the legislators to 2 sessions, 2 terms. Just as our governor is restricted. We would establish a yearly salary established by the Constitutional Convention, which would only be changed each 10 years and then must be approved by the population at a general election vote. No exceptions, no suspensions of the rules. The third thing I think we would do would be to have the sessions meet, for instance, in odd years, to consider general legislation and limit them to 60 days. In even years, or it could be vice versa, we would have a session of the legislature for 30 days, which would consider only budget items and revenue measures, period, nothing else. We might even have put, or we could put, probably some restrictions on how the legislature is proceeding. Under its own rules, why they have followed Congress, where bills sent out to committees can be squashed or whatever. We would say that after a bill has been sent to a committee by the Speaker or the President of the Senate, within 14 days, the bill would have to appear on the floor for general consideration of the body. the bill could be remanded to another committee, but only by the body, not by the President of the Senate or the Speaker of the House. And within 7 days, that bill would have to come back to the floor for final consideration. Now, this stricture would help to, I think, pass or defeat good legislation with the full consideration of the legislature. In other words, it would eliminate constant holding back of various bills by either committees or being held in hostage by some faction of the committee, or being squashed or killed completely by a hostile committee chairman. Now, it might be really tying their hands, but I think their hands need to be tied. We might devise a method of controlling the public employment. I've read statistics whereby all of the 48 states, or 49 states now, have various ratios of employees, state employees, to the population. And it is about 6 or 8 times less than our ratios. I think if we had a constitutional convention, we might just say, well, let's average out the ratios of all the other states and adopt that average for Alaska. And by averaging it, we could let the employment rise or fall as the population of Alaska rose or fell. In 1992, the question of a constitutional convention will appear in the ballot. So far, there has been little to really have a constitutional convention about, and since there are several methods of amending the Constitution. However, the actions of recent legislatures and legislators may have changed public opinion. And I believe that if the 1980 session of the legislature makes no corrections in programs and budgets and gets it back to what the public wants, that there may very well be a yes vote when the next Constitutional Convention is called for 1992. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am assigned the area of the battle for statehood to talk about. And that is one of the most interesting phases of this whole evening. It covers 10 to 15 years. It depends on how you measure the beginning. And it's a fascinating story where a handful of people in a remote area of the nation, far off in a distant place that few people were concerned about, remote, misunderstood, and most of the nation unconcerned, went back and figuratively knocked on the doors of Congress and wanted admission to sit down as a full-fledged state. The 2 senators that represent this shirt tail full of people, as the senator from Texas said, and be at the family table, as it were, instead of this red-haired stepchild running around just getting the remnants of whatever Congress saw fit to give them. It was an amazing experience and an evolutionary process, and I'm sure all of you here, this is ringing bells with many of you remember it. We started out with everybody opposed. Even Alaskans were opposed. I'm not talking about all Alaskans, but the people in official positions and important positions. Practically the whole political establishment was opposed to statehood in the beginning, and the business community was opposed because it was dominated by the salmon industry, which was headquartered outside of Alaska, absentee owners of everything in Alaska, and they were not interested in having anything happen in Alaska that might require taxes. They didn't want any development for more people. They didn't want cities to grow. There were needs for roads and hospitals and schools, and it just needs more taxes, and they knew where those taxes would fall. Alaska, Anchorage, the Alaska salmon industry being the main industry. So they opposed it, and they were a real formidable opponent. They had lots of money and they spent it, and they had lots of talent and they used it. So for 15 years, we fought them. It started out with a handful fighting, but as Alaskans listened to these mavericks running around here talking about this radical thought, they took to it, and the idea grew. First among Alaskans, Anchorage, it went fast, and it spread to Fairbanks and other cities from there on. And of course, any idea that starts in Anchorage is slow to take root in Fairbanks. But it did take root, and they went for statehood. I can't say that Juneau ever did really go for it. Most of Southeastern was noted as being opposed, as I remember. Maybe in the end they voted for it. But in Alaska, we had an awful turmoil, inner turmoil. Do we or don't we want to be a state? What are the advantages and disadvantages? And that's a process of learning and a fascinating period to live through. Meanwhile, this legislature, when the pressure grew among the people, they were talking about statehood. The legislature, they didn't want statehood, but they felt the pressure and they reluctantly created what they called the Alaska Statehood Committee. And it's about 15 people, something like 10 Democrats and 5 Republicans. I was one of the 5 Republicans appointed by the governor. And the 10 Democrats couldn't agree on which Democrat they wanted to be president or chairman, so they compromised on me. And the Democrats elected me. So for 10 years, I was their chairman. And it was fascinating 10 years. With this official title, I could then go back to Washington and be representing the state and talk to senators, and they'd listen. And yet, they'd always look down their nose at all of us. These little upstarts from way off somewhere who think that they should be a member of the union, and they think their senators should sit with us in our exclusive club that has only 98 members, and 96 at that time, and they think they want 2 for them. It was all disproportionate, wasn't right, but historically it's the way the nation's built, and we could have good, strong arguments to defend it, and they couldn't deny it. It took us years to get all these things lined up, and we found very quickly there's no handbook, guidebook tells you how to become a state. Nobody tells you. So we had to innovate and discover how we wanted to become a state. So we imitated Tennessee. Tennessee, they had their troubles becoming a state, and they took it upon themselves to elect 2 senators and a representative and send them back to Washington without being invited by Congress to knock on the doors figuratively, and ask to be admitted. And within a year or a year and a half, Tennessee was a state. And 2 or 3 other territories had done that, and successfully, and they became states.